Hi and welcome. This is my build of the Westland Sea King, and I'm choosing the variant HAS1. You need to choose the variant right at the beginning, so you look through the schemes, decide which one you want, and then you need to make various holes and modifications as required to the variant that you wish to make. And I use a mixture of different adhesives, and this is Tamiya's white top, which is a slightly stronger one, and I'm just using that there because I want the part to be secure in place. These smaller parts I would use the light green or the regular green ones on, the light green being a faster acting adhesive. So once you've drilled all those holes and you've got the scheme you want to, obviously need to go through the instructions and highlight or mark out which instructions you need to follow, because there's so many variants in one kit. And here, as you can see, I'm painting things like the foot pedals and the joysticks on the sprue, just because it's easier to do. And once you've done that, I'm then going on to build the seats for the pilots and the crew. These were a little bit tricky. Can't say they weren't, they're just a bit fiddly, but a pair of tweezers and some of that Tamiya extra thin, and you'll get it no problem. Now, what did I do there? Well, there's a lot of sub-assemblies, so I'm just starting to put them on a bit of foam board, and then once they're assembled, I'll stick them on that piece of yellow sticky tape, and then I'm going to put them all to one side, and then give them a coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500. I like to prime my parts before putting the colour on, and that's it. And here I'm using XF77 Tamiya's paint to put the grey onto the cabin floor. So yeah, it's a pretty easy scheme, and then using the German grey XF63, and we paint all those schemes. Now I lost a bit of footage, but as you can see, I've proceeded to carry on with the sub-assemblies, and here we have the dipping sonar array. And take a tip from me, build it, paint it separately and then assemble afterwards, otherwise you'll never get that internal colour painted. And we're putting on some of the instrument decals here, using Microsol and 1 and 2, and I like to just wet the tip of a cotton bud in the Microsol once I've got happy where it is, and then I just dab it on, and it seems to adhere really well to the instrument panel. So once you've got your sub-assemblies built for the inside, it's just a case of putting them on. I'm using some CA glue there, and you could use extra thin, but the CA glue is what I used on this occasion. So I'm using some black super glue here just to fill these ejector pin marks. There was 3 of them, and it's very quick and easy. You just let it go hard and then sand it back and you're done. And here I'm using some buff to dry brush the instrument panels and to ping out the details. It really makes a difference. You can't see it anyway when it's all closed up, but it's just a pleasure to do it. I think I'm using a different grey here, and just to bring out some details on that metalwork, for instance, and on some edges. There's been further weathering to go, but that's a start anyway. And for the internal walls, I did a mix of XF8 blue, Tamiya's XF8 blue, 1 part to 3 parts German grey, Tamiya's German grey, and that gave a nice, what I felt was a pretty accurate colour. It's a case of putting on these sides, and I did one side and fixed that in place, and then I decided to weather the interior some more using some of Tamiya's brown panel line accent, and I just put that on, and as you can see, I just used the brush, wiped it all over just to give it a bit of a dirty grubby feel with people's boots and general wear and tear coming through. They used a bit of Tamiya's black panel line, and did that over as well. And because everything was sealed down with a matte coat of varnish to lock it in place, I then went over the decals with some GX100, Mr. Colours GX100, which is a clear gloss varnish, and just picked out the screens, what would have a screen on it, so it creates a reflective surface against the matte interior. And then I picked out some of the instrument panels as well, and just to give it a little bit of a glow. And then when that's done, it's time to lock it up, and then glued it all up and sealed it up and left it for a day or so, and then carried on with the external part of the helicopter. Now I've got a big confession to make. I did absolutely muck this up because I managed to put the exhaust vents, as you can see, and they are positioned incorrectly, so do not position them like you see them now. And unfortunately I didn't realise this until much later, and I had to open it all up, and as you watch this go together you can see how complicated, perhaps not complicated but involved, and how this is knitted together to create a strong seal, and this had to be I had to get it all off and redo it. Anyway, I was annoyed at that. So this is quite good because you put this spine over the join of the fuselage halves, and it covers up the join nicely, and we're putting on the various parts of the build. When you put these landing gear sponsons on, they're not designed to sit flush with the body. There is supposed to be a gap there. Airfix have accounted for this, so whatever you do, don't think oh, that shouldn't be there, and cut it off, because it's correct. The landing gear was fairly straightforward, and here I'm putting together the rear rotor, or tail rotor as it should be. Very straightforward, and an absolutely enjoyable kit. It's so nice. Now you can see actually in the top left of the picture I've had to take that apart to sort the exhaust out, and it looks a mess, but actually at the end of the day, don't be frightened, because it is plastic and you can file it, put pieces in, re-rivet it, make it good, and when you see the aircraft at the end, helicopter at the end, you'll see that you can't hardly see that, if at all. The canopy went together fairly well, and there were a couple of issues with the fit, but overall not too bad. And I've used various canopy fixing adhesives over the years. This was the micro crystal clear, and it worked, and it dries clear. And then we're just going through and we're putting on lots of little parts that fit all over the shop, particularly on the underneath of the helicopter. Depending on the variant that you're doing, you will put on different parts in different places and make holes in different areas. So as I was saying, yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic kit. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm using a picture there for reference on the colour. Just trying to get that colour correct. So, and as you can see, I'm using a bit of Mr. Colour 14 and X4 and mix those to create the colour. And the ratio of that paint was about 4:1, with the Mr. Colour being the 4:1 of Tamiya. So I put some grey primer on initially, and then some black Mr. Surfacer, and then did the required filling that's required when building aircraft. And here I'm creating a salt effect to give the finished colour a interest in variation, otherwise it'll end up looking like well, basically a toy. So I used some Mr. Colour Super Stainless Steel to ping out the exhaust, and then I painted it in the blue colour I mentioned earlier over the top of that black and white. Once I'd done that, it was time for the decals. And the Airfix decals, I've never had a problem with them at all. They go on really well. I've never had silver in. You know, obviously they're going on to a gloss coat on this occasion, so I've glossed the model after painting it with the finished colour. A little bit of the microsole there, that's the number 2, and then carry on. Now on this particular version, the HAS1, there are a lot of decals. It took me probably about 8 hours to get all the decals down. Did it over 2 or 3 days, and it was a labour of love. I can tell you, if I picked one of the other schemes, there wouldn't be nearly so many. So when doing the props, use a guide, and I'm using a cutting mat there to make sure that all the bands are perfectly in line and straight and line up perfectly. And then I'm just dabbing on some of the setting solution there. Using some panel line accent from Tamiya there to ping out the rivets and so on. And it's such a beautiful kit. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I've got another version of this kit, a later version, because they've reissued it as a different version, as many of you will know. And watching and redoing this video, because I made this a couple of years ago, to be honest, and just watching it makes me want to build it again. I really did enjoy this kit, and now I know how to put the exhaust on, it should be even better. So I'm using some Alclad jet exhaust there, but any sort of jet exhaust would do, just very lightly bringing out the staining that occurs on these Westlands. I just can't get over it. This kit is beautiful. It does have its issues, but they're not insurmountable if you've got any sort of experience at all. Highly recommend it. So we're not going to spray this particular helicopter with a matte. We're using satin varnish to seal in the decals, and then we need to make a green tint on the top canopies, Some people spray it from the inside. On this occasion I've sprayed it after the event, so it's been done on the outside. And then we start to put it all off. I may have got that video footage around the wrong way, but anyway, you get the idea. So we're just peeling off the canopy, very satisfying. When you're building the aircraft, or the helicopter, do pay attention to the colour schemes. There is a black belt just above the 44, very easy to miss when you're looking at the colour schemes, and it just wipes around the windows slightly. It makes all the difference to you can see it in that picture, makes all the difference to the finished product, and it's a cracking aircraft. It really is good. We're getting close to the finish. We just need to start putting some extra bits on and do a little bit more weathering. And here I'm using a wax pencil for chipping. It's not a regular HB pencil, it's like a polychromo silver pencil, and it just does some chipping effects and creates a slightly worn edge. It's those little details that actually add up to produce a really quite good kit at the end of the day, in my view. So then it's just a case of doing the final fixes. A bit of CA glue to fix the top of the door on. I've put some of the various wires on for the steps, and there's actually like an antenna wire that runs alongside the aircraft, and that little puff there was super glue fast set, so put a bit of super glue on and then sprayed it on, hold it for another second or two, let it set, and it'll be as strong as you come. And then I'm just finishing that wire and painting it black. We're getting towards the end and the final pictures and little short video. Appreciate you watching if you've got this far, and I will see you soon.